Welcome everyone to the Shin-Arken Podcast. This is episode 3. We got myself, we got Arken. What's up, Arken?
Hey dude, what's up?
Yo, not much. And then we also got Koroshi on, because we're going to be talking about engineer stuff today. What's up, Koroshi?
Hey, what's up?
Yo.
How's it going?
Going good. So we're gonna do, our normal thing. We're gonna just go over just kind of our views of the current meta. It's a big thing, so it's not like we can just oh yeah, this is the meta, sum it up in 10 minutes. No, we can't really do that. So we'll just kind of our thoughts on the meta that we haven't really touched on in the past. Like one or two things that were what could be fixed or what's good or what's not, stuff like that, and then we'll jump into the NG stuff. Typical thing that we've been doing in the past. So yeah, I guess Arken, anything that's popped up in the past week or so that you've been like, oh my god, what's wrong with this? Why is this meta this way? Bah.
I don't know. I still, even though Warriors have pretty much, denounced the whole Kanye meta, pretty much. They are the counter to the Kanye meta, you know what I mean? So they've been pretty relevant. But I still think that having one profession, being a hard counter to that meta is a bad way to handle it, because it's still pretty viable in fights where the warrior is not there. But just one of the main things that I've never really enjoyed, and just in general, because again the necromancer also suffers from this, is very, very strong. Guardians have it too. I'm sure a lot of professions have very strong proc on crits. You know what I mean? They give you either a significant boon, or they put a significant hindrance on your enemy, and I don't like that at all, especially with the short cooldowns on, regardless of what you have. So those, I think, need to be looked at across all professions who have access to these. So that's my biggest problem. I don't mind, the whole idea of skill shots. That's what this game should be. So when you're equipping a grenade kit, you gotta actively hit someone with this thing. It's got a bit of travel time. One thing I don't like about this thing is how you can pretty much cast it on yourself, and consistently kite a melee character. Some people may disagree, but I think there should be a minimal range on this thing. I don't know, but that's just the main thing, is just having significant traits that really, really outshine the ability to really skill shot. So that's just for me. You guys there?
Yeah, sorry, I had to turn something off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically you're talking it's the whole lack of it's basically the issue is procs. It's the whole passive play you're basically getting at.
Every profession has some sort of some sort of list of traits like this. Again, it doesn't have to be a condition. It can be a boon. Like I have vigorous precision on my guardian. Same thing. Same concept, obviously. Two things do something completely different, but I think those definitely need to be looked at in general. Absolutely.
Yeah. As far as passive play on my end, I am not really one to talk because I have Healing Signet as my only form of sustain at the moment, but I do agree, passive play for PvE, it's fine. It's, PvE is meant to be, at least general PvE is meant to be the more casual, more, laid back, do what you want, go farm mobs you want, go explore the world. You're not really concerned about your skill usage as you are with what's over here, what's in this cave, exploration, immersion, stuff like that. But in PvP, I do agree that passive play it detracts from fully unlocking the potential of a player. It causes, there are too many passive counters to things that will prevent someone who is very skilled with, say, the engineer, or with the warrior, or with the ranger, or whatever. These passive things get in the way of that player realizing the full potential of their skill, because it's things that they can't control, things that are just always there, things they can't, they can account for them, but they're not really, it's more balance based than something you can really outmaneuver, outscale. That's why I'm not happy with the Signet situation, and that's why a lot of people in general aren't happy with the Signet situation for Warriors, is because it's overtuned, and there's a lot of healing that people have to get through that
left your channel.
It can't be. You can't really do much against it. It's just always there. You can't interrupt the heal. There's no real counterplay to it other than applying poison, and otherwise just keeping the warrior from doing anything that makes it as strong as it is. It's just kind of that lack of counterplay. That's how I see it. Is passive effects remove the aspect of counterplay, and in competitive player versus player, that's kind of a big turnoff. It's kind of a big downside. Koroshi, what do you think?
For me, I agree completely with what you said. It doesn't promote any type of skill play, but I feel it's also like the way this game mechanics is set up. It's very fast paced, so it's very hard to say, okay, I see an important skill, let's dodge that. For a warrior, you can easily see it because it's so slow paced. Like these skills, you can kind of counter it. If you know he's going in the hammer, you can see that hammer swing, so you still have a little bit of time to dodge. Other classes, it's much harder to counter that. And I don't want to just like focus on just the passive play. I think it's like a little bit of everything. You have the stealth gameplay in Thieves, where it's uncounterable. Like you can't counter stealth. There's one ability for the ranger which has a very long cooldown and only gives a 4-second stealth debuff. I honestly would have like the thief like reworked with a lot less stealth ability. So maybe the weapons don't give stealth anymore, and that they're forced to use utilities for stealth. So it's not as much, I guess, as powerful as it is right now. For example, the engineer. For the engineer to hit stealth, I have to give up skills. I have to give up multiple skills to get long duration stealth. So I'd have to combo certain skills like my smoke field. But an enemy player can counter that. They see the smoke field and they know, oh, the engineer is going to stealth. Let me pull him out, let me push him out. And if we pull him out, then we know for the next 25 seconds he's not able to do that again. And I might have already wasted a couple of skills trying myself to get myself stealthed for that.
Okay,
so that's kind of like where I would like to see go.
Okay, so you're basically looking at the opportunity cost, the how easy it is for certain professions to access passive play versus others.
Yeah.
So yeah, like with the engineer, it's much more difficult for you to gain access to stealth. You have to give up a lot more than say a thief. Arguably, you could say that that stealth is part of the flavor, the theme of a thief. But at the same time, I do see what you're talking about, where it's like they have too much access to it. It's almost too easy for them to just avoid fighting and just hold on to that passive play and then use that to their advantage. But go ahead.
Well, for me, it's like not even that. Like in stealth, they actually are able to health regen and Condi removal constantly while staying in stealth, and it's very easy to stay permanently stealthed. I played a thief myself for 7 months or so. I actually set up a build that was kind of immortal. I was able to go into Zergs and just cloak and dagger on the commander every single time, every 3 seconds, without even being visible for my opponent. They would only see the 3 stacks of vulnerability. Because I timed the cloak and dagger right, and I was able to stay permanently stealthed, and I killed commanders like that. That's it. I did it on stream. Everybody saw it, and it's still you can still do that. I don't know. It boggles my mind that stuff like that is in the game, and I think it shouldn't be able to be done like that. And that's just one part. Yeah, you know about the healing signet. I think the healing signet. How it was before was close to being okay. The 200 health regen, it was a little bit low, so I do agree that they should have buffed it, but doubling it went a little bit over the top. And if you combine that with adrenal health and the cleansing ire, it can go pretty crazy.
I think it was actually a lot worse than before. It wasn't just 200. It actually popped not every second, but every 3 seconds.
Yep, that was the case.
So it got buffed not by just 100%. You got to multiply that, so it's like 300% buff from that specific signet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they reduced the tick, time, while increasing the base health. Which again, we're getting a little off topic there, but yeah, with these extravagant buffs they like to do, people don't seem to realize that it only takes one balance patch to either royally screw someone or make something ridiculously strong.
Yep. As can be seen with things like Hambo, with things like Piu Kandi Mesmer, just Warrior in general with the healing signet. Yeah, it's the wide swings of balance that tend to push the meta too far in one direction, and it causes issues. It causes certain things to become much more powerful than they should be, or things that needed a slight tweak before are suddenly blown way out of proportion. Things like that. Like Warriors before, without going too much off topic, because this is going to be primarily engineer focused, but or I should say, with Warriors before, yeah, we needed help, but the way they helped us was too much. They added a little bit of condition clearing, which is fine. We needed it. Then they added a little more, which is fine. We still needed it. And then they threw our sustain way out of whack. We used to need a lot of sustain, then they gave us way too much, and they put it all on one ability. It's the wide balance pass swings that tend to cause the most issues, I feel at least. And bring it back to engineer, I feel with the engineer, honestly, NG hasn't had that much as far as wide swings. Like, to me, even from release, NGs have been that one class where if you're terrible, if you can't play an NG well, you will die a lot. But if you are a very skilled engineer, you can play it very well and you will dominate everyone because you know how to access all of the aspects of the class that are available to you, and it's so complex that it's hard for wide swings to really affect it because they only affect a few pieces of that very large, very complex puzzle.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
For me, as an engineer, because I started later in the game with the engineer, I actually thought it was a pretty bad class from the opponents that I met in the initial PvP, and this was because I was mainly a world versus world player, and I wasn't really an SPP where they were a little bit more dominant. And the second I started into an engineer and I opened the skills, and I was like, oh my god, this is heaven. I have so many opportunities, I have so many combos I can do. It's for me, I would love to see every single class like this. You can do so much, especially if you combine skills, and that combining the skills, that brings in strategy, it brings in more of a how do you call it, a positive and a negative. Like, do you want to use this combo? Do you want to give up those skills to get that extra buff? Do you want to use those skills to get that extra heal? And if I do this, will this potentially make me lose the fight? If I would give my big bomb away for the extra heal, I'm going to lose a massive knockback, which I can use in combination with other skills again. That's something that I have as an engineer, but not as any other class.
Okay, so you're looking for you want a bit more depth to the gameplay of other professions, a bit more complexity, a bit more ways of combining abilities to do certain, like, basically choosing different ways to combine different abilities to give you different effects and otherwise reward good gameplay, good strategic thought and planning.
Exactly. It promotes skilled gameplay. It promotes actually looking past just the skills that you have available, and it doesn't focus as much at passive gameplay as other classes.
Yeah. Arken, what do you think on it?
I think it's a great idea. Like, again, having more skills definitely helps, especially with your diversity. Because when you have few skills, I sometimes believe that, again, when you're limited to we'll say most professions, because most professions only have access to, say, 15 skills, 10 at once. When you're limited to such few skills, I think the margin of error, starts to become very small, because, again, with the limited quantity of skills that you have, you really have to time those. Whereas if you have a few bit more, then you can combo into things a little better. I think it might be slightly more forgiving, because, again, you definitely have a lot more diversity. So I think that'd be awesome. I think every profession should have access to something like that. diversity would only help, definitely not hinder whatsoever.
Yeah. Now, one counter argument I would say to this whole deal is consider the appeal of how the different professions are at the moment. Consider the flavor. Warrior is a good example of what I'm about to mention. Is the whole idea that you have something it's a very straightforward class. You don't have to deal with anything fancy. You don't have to deal with any sort of fancy combos or anything like that. It's very much you run in, you have your skill set, you do the damage, you do whatever your role is with whatever weapon you have. It's very very focused around what weapon you're using. That's one reason I feel that we have so much access to all the weapons we do, is instead of having all these combinations that we can do between our utilities and our weapons and different toolkits with the engineer, for example, or combo fields that we can drop or whatever, it's very much dependent on what weapon we bring to the table, how we plan ahead with what weapon loadout we bring, rather than what utility skills we have or basically, Warrior is more straightforward in the sense that how you plan before the fight is what determines how you intend to play, what your play style will be. Whereas with, say, an engineer, it's more about how are you managing everything within the fight. How are you could say micromanaging. How are you dealing with the situations as they come up? Engineers have a lot more play to how they can maneuver with opponents and adapt to the situation. Like I have constantly said on my stream, like Engis have such clutch healing, or Engis are so clutch, things like that. It's being able to pull just all sorts of tools, pun not intended, out of nowhere, to adapt to the situation. Whereas with, say, a warrior, it's very much okay. You have what you have, and you need to know how to deal with any situation with that set. You don't really have anything to. You don't have really any flexibility other than what you have brought. And I understand that warriors do have weapon swapping at their disposal, but it's not the flexibility to the extent of the engineer, where you can have upwards of 2-3 kits available at any time, which are essentially weapon sets in and of themselves. But yeah, I would say more room for skillful gameplay is definitely a plus, but you do have to keep in mind what attracts people to certain professions, what attracts people to certain play styles. It's the sense that not everything is as complex of a puzzle as engineer. People don't have to worry about perfect play for everything. I'm an advocate of having more of that, but I can definitely see the perspective of someone else who wants a very straightforward profession where they don't have to worry about like 50 different components all working together perfectly.
Yeah, I can see that appeal, absolutely. Maybe if they were to do something like keep that appeal, but have options that are also viable. So keep 2 options viable. You can have, more diversity, or you can stick to the tried and true, but still be viable. You know what I mean? Maybe, trying to appease both. I'm sure that would be really hard to do, but I don't see any issue with that. No?
Yeah. Koroshi, any final thoughts on that?
It's a difficult thing to answer, because it does also somewhat bring in some kind of skilled decisions. By if you have less skills, you have to plan more ahead, like you said. I don't know. I guess the place where Arken is would probably be the best compromise if you did want to pull out a little bit more. And if you thought like you could use a little bit more utility, that you have like the options somewhat as a kit engineer, but in a different way set up for a warrior, so it's not really all the same. Could see that work. But yeah, ArenaNet needs to be able to to do that in this game, and I'm not sure if they are still able to do that. Such a big change.
Yeah, we'll see what they pull out. All right. We have burned probably about 20-ish minutes on the meta, so we'll jump into the engineer trait lines. Arkin and I can kind of give our perspectives on each of the trait lines, and then Koroshi, you can beat us down or
Okay.
approve us or whatever you want on our perspectives, whether or not it's the whole expert versus newbie type thing. So I guess I'll go first with we'll just go down the line, explosives to tools. Um, Explosives I've been messing around with on my own NG, and there are a lot of things I like in this trait line. A lot of very you can do a lot of setups with this, and I've fighting NGs a lot. I've noticed one of them that specifically I think is really cool, but it's a giant pain in the ass when I'm trying to fight it. Evasive powder keg, that very first adept trait you have. I've run into so many situations where that those bombs just constantly get in the way, just constantly are just throwing me for a loop because it's that extra little bit of damage, and then you throw on top of that you've got things like all of your bombs that make like you got the blind field one on, I believe that's on the bomb kit. Correct me wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong with it. But like just the, I guess it might be because I'm a bit of a pyromaniac at heart, but the whole idea behind the explosives trait line really appeals to me. Because it's all the explosions. You got all your cooldowns, you got all your bomb-centric stuff, and I guess an overall thing I could say about NGs is I really like how focused each trait line is. You've got one that deals with bombs, you've got one that deals with elixirs, one that deals with toolkits, things like that. I like that focused theme that each line has, whereas Warrior, it gets kind of muddled with a few of them. They have certain themes with them, but they're kind of muddled because half of them are you hit things harder, and half of them are you take less hit damage from things. But yeah, just traits like auto defense bomb, or I really like things like Grenadier, where it gives you not only more range on your grenades, but it gives you an extra grenade. Just fun things like that. Like the explosive tree to me, or explosive line to me, just has a lot of fun things in it. Arken, what do you think?
Okay. Yeah. I actually think the explosives line tree is actually pretty amazing. Both adepts, minor and master, I guess you could say. Because the whole tried and true example of the cookie cutter spec for this is obviously forceful explosives, incendiary powder, and then grenadier. Very, very good traits. But unfortunately, again, like I was stating earlier, is that one of these traits, unfortunately, again, goes towards that passive play. You know what I mean? And again, it's something that definitely needs to be looked at, because again, when you have traits like that, there's little room for counterplay, because eventually you're going to get crit. You can't constantly dodge something. It's not possible. It's going to happen. And in most cases, when you do get crit, the condition is already buried. So you better have a skill that clears more than one condition at a time. Aside from that, though, again, I actually see no issue with a lot of these skills, especially like with the Grandmaster, like Grenadier. That's actually a really, really cool trait. Increases your damage by 50%, as well as the long range is cool. Other than that, I think it's a pretty good set. It's very, very strong, very, very heavily AoE oriented, which again could be a plus or a minus in some cases. A minus being, we have a lot of AoE in this game, be it power as well as Condi. And in some cases, that AoE is on par, or if not greater than the single target damage you could have done. So I like the tree. I think it's a good tree. I just like overall, I wish we had a little less, AoE and a little less, passive play. But it's a good tree. I like it.
Okay, I understand your your point of view, and I agree with a lot of them. On the evasive powder keg, this is something I have kind of a love and hate relationship with. It can be really strong. I've actually had where I dodged 3 times and it dropped 3 times a bomb and it killed a full glass cannon deep. It was yep, because all my Condis procced on it, and that's something I agree with Arken completely. Like, the burning damage is our strongest Condi, and it just procs on any kind of ability where we crit on, and that's crazy to me, because having your strongest condition for free just on any type of skill, I'm like, okay, yeah, 100% I have to take that. There's no other option. If I'm going to go for Condi, even as a power build, you want that, because burning still does a lot of damage as a power build. But the bad part of the evasive powder keg is, let's say I do combo in my stealth and I decide to dodge while during my stealth, I of course get de-stealthed, which means I have a problem, and I can't dodge, so I have to, after I have to stealth, I have to walk normally, which means anyone who spams AoEs on my stealth field will probably kill me. So that's one of the major downparts from the powder keg. And this is something I've been having a problem with myself, also with other classes, like for example the Thief with the Last Refuge, where if you hit 25% health you get automatically stealthed, which will kind of can interrupt you, because if you're attacking during that time you will get a stealth debuff. I wish I could turn off minor traits, or at least somewhat change them.
Okay, so it's one of those things where it's like, it's yeah, like you were saying, a love-hate relationship. Like, you like it, but at the same time it screws with your gameplay so much that it's like, it's a pain, but a pain that you want type thing.
Yeah. On top of that, I agree with the explosive traits line. It's an amazing one because you get so many options. There are some minor traits that nobody will ever pick, like the smoke bomb, but like the grenadier, it gives you like debuff to go for as a grenadier, and everything works well together on this trait line. If you're going for a grenadier, you're gonna have that minor trait just before that grandmaster, which allows you to stack a lot of vulnerability, especially in group play. That's a amazing buff to have. And other things like the enhanced performance, you can use that for might stacking builds, so you can still somewhat get the extra Kandi setup, but you can go for enhanced performance to get a somewhat of a might stacking build. Yeah, I think this is one of those straight lines. Even though most of the engineers will kind of get forced into a few picks, you still get options. If you're a bomb kit user, you'll go for the short fuse, which is 20% less cooldown on your bombs instead of the grenadier trait. And if you're going for grenadier, you take that one instead. So I'm really happy with this straight line.
I'm just quick upping you guys because I'm getting told that you guys aren't as loud as I am. There we go. That's
some of us want to be soft.
Soft.
You know, soft.
Soft. Yeah. Let's see. And okay, so that's the explosive tree. I guess the general consensus, even from the resident expert, is it's a good trait line. Going down to firearms, looking at it, this one looks like it's heavily focused around burning and just in general, like your guns, which makes sense, called firearms, but it seems to be mostly conditions and burning. Like, I'm looking at Napalm Specialist. Burns you apply last a third longer. And then modified ammunition damage increased by 2% per condition on the target. Things like that. It's again, it seems like the theme that ANET set each profession up is, you got the top is your burst damage tree. You got your all of your like power based stuff, and then the second one down is your conditions, and then your defense and support and utility. And firearms definitely falls into that. Now, I've seen what I noticed, or I have noticed, how little things like rifle typically get used and things along those lines. But at the same time, I see how often pistol is used. So this line seems like half of it is geared towards something that's very useful for the engineer, but the other half of it seems to be like almost just baggage, because a lot of engineers don't use the other weapon that it supports. For example, like Go for the Eyes, it looks like a major trait that would be nice for a rifle engineer, but with the current state of rifle for engineers, as far as I'm aware, I'm nowhere near an expert on it, but it seems like one that just doesn't get picked very often because not a lot of engineers take rifle. Other than certain people like Beatus, but that's his shtick, Dr. Beatus. I'd say, I guess it looks like one of those trees where it's good for going down for specific things, but overall it's like half of it isn't really there. Like, it's not really used often. What do you think, Arken?
Well, this is one of those trait lines that I really don't ever pay attention to because, again, most engineers don't really run this. I can honestly say I've never really seen, aside from maybe like a power engie, and even then, I'd still see engies pop quite a few points in explosives. But again, I can see like a lot of these traits seem fair. You know, they don't. I don't think they seem too overly aggressive, too overly powerful. Like this one sounds, again, Juggernaut sounds pretty cool. It sounds really cool, but again, how often do engineers say use flamethrower aside from a decap engie? You know what I mean? And even then, you probably wouldn't take this as a decap engie, I would think. It just seems like this trait doesn't even seem like it does much for condition damage, honestly. It really doesn't, aside from napalm specialists. And that's it, and that's the weird part, because again, this is what you would consider to be your condition damage tree, but explosives is definitely more condition heavy, absolutely, because again, it's modifying some of your kits that affect conditions heavily, such as Grenadier or Incinerator Powder, which is a huge one. I don't see anything here in firearms that really does much. I mean, Sitting Duck seems pretty cool, but again, there's no damaging conditions on this, you know, and there's no other trait that really does that. So this seems like it's more for burst setup, definitely, more than condition damage. Absolutely. Again, I look at all these traits and I don't see anything overly too powerful at all. But then again, when you have a tree like this, you're looking at other trees again, which some may deem to be really strong, and you know, regardless of what spec you're running, and take that anyways. So it's not. I don't think it's a bad tree. It's just I think it's overshadowed by explosives.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, it's mainly built for power-based engineers. Like, the one thing that I like in this tree for a Condi engineer, and this is why I got 10 points in here, is that number 5 trait, which is the minor trait, the sharpshooter. Critical hits have a chance to cause bleeding, which allows me to get 2 to 3 stacks bleeding if I keep constant pressure on my opponent. On top of that, I also have hair trigger, but that's only because I can't really spend those 5 points anywhere else, which allows me to blind more often and apply poison more often for my pistol. And that's kind of as far as I go as a Condi build. Now, if you look into power builds, there's actually quite a lot of variety in power builds. There's another engineer called Wolfeneer who runs a might stacking power build with a lot of toughness. I think he has 1700 toughness, and he runs the rifle and flamethrower combo. Now, rifle, the reason why many engineers don't pick it is it just doesn't give us the same kind of Condi pressure as the pistol, and on top of that, the utility, it's a little bit more risky to use than the pistol shield combo. But if you use this in combination with, like, let's say a flamethrower, which allows you to get a lot of might stacking, and if you set up your entire armor set as might stacking, you can actually stack up quite easily to 17 stacks of might constantly, without even having the Elixir HC8 set up or something. It makes this build work a lot more better. The other ones, they're not really too interesting. You can go for the 10% damage increase or the shorter rifle cooldowns, but it's nothing too crazy. It's an okay trait, but nothing that would say, yeah, I'm going to totally go for this.
Okay, so it sounds like the engineer rifle, it suffers from the same thing the warrior rifle does, which is it just doesn't perform for what roles the profession typically will find itself in, or most playstyles just don't have a use for the rifle. The warrior's rifle kit is very, very niche. It's very, you're sniping in the middle of a group, or you're running a super, like, glassy one-shot 1v1 build, and that's about it. It just doesn't really have staying power for anything else. It doesn't have the overall damage. It doesn't have the utility, things like that. And that's what it seems like the situation with the rifle is for Engie, like in a similar situation to what it is for Warrior.
It's weird, isn't it, Koro?
Especially since it doesn't apply any single condition.
It doesn't do anything, but it's your condition damage tree. I'm looking, it's freaking condition damage right there. I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. But I think every class has something like that, right? I mean, my class is the same as yours, Koro. I have power and condition damage duration on my same tree. What am I going to do with that?
Well, at least it's not like Warrior where we got power and condition duration of all things.
Yeah, that's what we just said.
Oh, well, I have the same. I have the same thing. I
Makes
mean,
no sense.
I mean, to be fair, with Warrior, we do have it does increase like our immobilizers and our cripples, so I guess it has something like that. But even still, the weapons that would normally be that have that are in a different tree from the one that gives us the duration. So it's like you're kind of forced to go into the other if you go into one, if you're going for a certain thing. Okay, I guess we can bump down to the next one. Let's see. Inventions. Let's see. This is looking to be now. Oh, okay. I just glanced at this, and this looks like the one that is oriented around your turrets, your mortar, your things like that. Kind of your devices, your goggles, stuff like that. The non elixir, non toolkits utilities. Yep, I'm seeing one here, like metal plating reduces damage dealt to turrets. You got rifle turret barrels, which is dealing more damage and have a longer attack range, things like that. There is another one here that I just spotted, elixir infused bombs. This one is something that I would expect to see in your support tree. Down, like for example, I'm assuming alchemy is your support tree, but seeing that in there as the grandmaster trait in your what, at least for the equivalent to warrior would be your selfish defense tree, your self-sustain tree, seems interesting. I mean, it heals you, but it also heals your allies. It seems like they did here with the NG that's a little more balanced than say what with the warrior. The warrior, the defense tree is very selfish. It's all about you. It's all about keeping yourself alive. Whereas the tactics tree is all about your allies and very little about yourself. Seems like with this tree, with the inventions tree, it's a lot more spread evenly between the two. You have a lot of stuff that keeps you alive, but you have a few things that are more, I guess, group support oriented. Like you've got improvements to turrets, which I would assume a large portion of these include healing turret. You've got one in here, elite supplies, that affects supply crate, which is also helpful for allies. Things like power shoes and just. I'm not saying it's like completely split evenly or like it's geared towards group support, but it seems a lot more balanced between the two than say the warrior defense line. I guess Arken, what's your take on it?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I actually think this tree has like half good traits but half bad ones. Like I can list off a couple good ones. Like protective shield. I look at that and I'm like, damn, that is nice. It's just having one of the more powerful boons on you without really having to think about it. Again, it's just one of those things I've been talking about where again a lot of passive play is involved where you really don't have to do any thinking. It's kind of done for you, and it applies a significant boon or hindrance to your enemy. You know what I mean? So, but that's a good one. I like that. That's an insane one. I like, again, energized armor sounds pretty cool. Again, another way to get more power, which is actually pretty sweet. The weird thing I don't understand about this is like I look at warriors and they have a much better one as a grandmaster minor, but this is master adept. I guess that's a way to balance it. I mean, okay. Another one like stabilized armor, another way to reduce damage taken when you're getting stun locked. So that's another really really good trait that I find. But then you look at some of the really bad ones that I just can't see myself ever taking as an engineer or anybody as an engineer. And honestly, it's probably more towards the simple fact that I'd say like 2/3 of the traits in this tree suck. I can like going from Grandmaster, I can never see anybody taking elixir infused bombs. The healing scaling is terrible. What is that? Bomb explosions heal allies. I mean, like I'm running a let me put on a cleric exam and see how that actually scales. Like I can only imagine it's terrible, but again, that's a grandmaster in your inventions tree. You're looking at getting healed for like 280 with a full cleric's amulet, and that's a grandmaster, and it's really really bad. I can't see myself taking it. You were right though, Koro. I mean, I'm sorry, Shin, about this being more focused on your turrets, and it's true. But with the way turrets are, they're not nearly as viable as kits. You know what I mean? So again, another reason why I can't see myself ever taking anything like that. Again, this seems like a mix between, again, like what Shin said, between yourself and your allies a little bit, sometimes toward your turrets. But again, with turrets being so weak right now, I can only see myself taking the selfish traits more than anything else. But that's pretty much it. So, I mean, I can maybe like 2 or 3 good traits here, but the rest of them are just they're focused on a spec that is not powerful enough.
Yeah, the I agree with the turret AI is terrible, and I even tried to make it work with the turrets. I forced myself to set up a turret build. I couldn't do it. And net turret that nets downed players while I'm fighting one that's alive. I'm like, okay, thank you. He was already down. It's it's something that I don't think any engineer could fix it. Like people that pick turrets right now are usually like the static discharge builds that want the short cooldown tool belt skill, so they can activate their static discharge. But nobody's really focused on turrets, as in main type of damage. Now the elixir infused bombs, I personally thought at first it was going to be really bad, but then I saw another engineer called Kazakaya, and he used that trade setup, and holy shit, man, that guy was unkillable with that trade setup. He was tanking people while dropping those bombs. I'm like,
Really?
okay. Yeah, he was literally tanking. He was fighting stunning styles, and he was just dropping bombs.
That's
And he was just
weird.
tanking stunning.
It's just
It
with a
worked
full
like with a
clerics, it's so
yeah.
small. 284 for a full cleric set. It must be higher somewhere else, or I must be missing something.
I think so. He did really well against, and you have to combine that like with all your other healings that you have as an engineer. If you have your healing turret, you have your elixir gun that you can drop your number 5 of, and everything counted up, it can go pretty crazy. But you gotta like keep your skills going on constantly to make that work. Because I think you can only drop number 1 every 1 second, so it's a little bit slower. And I guess if you like kite around, it can go really well. And I think in places like SPVP, where you have to stick on a single point and you can pressure your opponents with bombs, it works really well. Other traits, like for example, the what's called stabilized armor. If you combine that with other traits that we'll find later in the tree, like alchemy's protection injection, that can be an insane boost. That's almost a 50% damage reduction when you're knocked down or stunned. So that builds up really well with the other traits. I have seen a lot of NC going for power shoes that weren't really too fond of the kit switching. So if you're running a non-kit build, power shoes is a very strong trait.
Yeah, the thing about power shoes for an NG is, unless except for I'm probably looking at this from a warrior perspective, someone who wants to get in and do the melee, so it's probably just a different mentality thing. But just seeing that trait on a profession that is designed around staying at range for the most part, like you only have one real actual melee hit, and that's your wrench and your toolkit. It seemed like I could see it for getting around the map, but it just seems strange for in combat purposes, other than outmaneuvering your opponent. But again, that's a perspective thing, and I know the engineers who know what they're doing know how to use it to good effect.
I need swiftness to, like, if I don't have swiftness, because I know all the other classes, or most other classes, have almost a permanent access to swiftness. So if you're not able to stay on the same kind of level with your movement speed, they're going to get close on top of you, and you're going to get screwed.
Yeah.
So you always want to keep your mobility up.
Yeah, squishy warrior builds is very similar. If you get stuck in one place, you're done. All right. I guess we can just quick jump down. We got about 10-15 minutes to get through the last 2, so we can kind of speed it up. We can still do what we're doing. All right. So here is, I finally found it. Here's the famed HGH trait. I thought this actually stood for something, but apparently it is literally just HGH. Let's just give 20 seconds of might. This is where you get, the might stacking for a minute and a half or whatever. This one actually seems like the same thing as inventions, only the opposite way around. This one seems more. This one has a lot of things that are designed around keeping you alive. Actually, this is a lot more than I was thinking. There are a lot more traits in here that are a bit more selfish than I would have expected from this line. Now, as it's labeled alchemy, it has a lot to do with elixirs. Not all that surprising to me, but looking at this trait line, in general, it seems like this has a lot more. Like, this is more in line with the Warriors' defense line. Like, it's a lot more selfish than I would expect it to be. Whereas Inventions is a lot more group support than I would expect. I don't know. I wasn't really expecting a flip like that, but again, that's why we're discussing it. But yeah, this seems like one that it has the niche role of, if you're running a heavy elixir build, this is the line you want to go down, and by doing so, you get a very powerful build out of it. Everyone knows how HGH goes. Yeah. Arken, your thoughts?
Okay. This again, I would completely agree with completely everything you just said. It definitely feels like a very much more selfish tree line than anything else, especially when you compare it to Inventions, which again I thought would probably be more selfish, and then Alchemy would probably be the more team support, because again it's like what looks to me to be like your support tree, but it's very deceptive. Looking at some of the miners, for instance, I can honestly say the two first the two first miners are amazing. Holy crap. Elixir B and Transmute, dude, those are insane. Unbelievable. I would have to say those are probably some of the best miners that I've ever seen in my life and in this game. It's really, really powerful. And then you look at the majors again, and then I look at some things like, again, Protection Injection. This one I think is a little too powerful given the internal cooldown. Against when you CC someone down, you should be I would think you would be rewarded for it by continuously hammering on them, but this again throws that for a little bit of a loop. So that's one of the more powerful, traits that allow for an insane amount of protection uptime. Again, this is definitely one of those trees where it has like half good traits, half bad, but I could definitely see that being with a lot of other trees as well. I can see, I think every single engineer, as far as I know, takes speedy kits. They just have to. You know what I mean? It's a necessity. But never mind.
That's the next one.
My bad. Okay. I can see where they would probably take invigorating speed, to stack on the vigor with the swiftness procs that we'll talk about later. So that is definitely a very, very strong combination. Staying mobile on an engineer is definitely key. Again, we're looking at, say, the master traits. Again, a lot of decent traits, nothing spectacular. I don't see anything, I don't see anything too crazy. For some reason, I find the adept ones to be stronger than the master ones, but that's just my opinion. Elixir durations, cleaning formula 409 is not too bad at all, especially if you need some Connie removal. But again, unless you're running pretty much all elixirs, this seems like it would be pretty useless in that regard. And we look at the Grandmaster. Again, the infamous HGH builds, pretty brutal, which I like. And then you look at, say, like Backpack Regenerator, which is also a very, very, very good trait. Again, it's very, very similar to, again, any sort of regeneration you would get, but it's always constant because you don't need. It's not even considered a boon because it's always constant as long as you can keep utilizing your kit skills. So this is definitely a tree where it has a lot of bad traits, but like a few really insanely good ones. So it's definitely a more selfish tree, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll start by responding on the comments you did. So first off, Protection Injection. I agree that that trait is freaking amazing, but it's necessary for an engineer. If we didn't have this trait right here, we'd actually die to every single warrior, because we lack the amount of stun breaks. The only really good stun break that we have, especially as a kit engineer, is Elixir Gun. But then we'd be forced to give up our mobility because Elixir Gun is affected by chills, cripples, and all that stuff, and we won't be able to jump out of the area. While, let's say, for example, the Rocket Boots, which allows us to cure immobilize and then lets us actually move safely away from our opponents. So if we were forced to use the Elixir Gun, we'd lose our mobility, and that will be our only stun break. And like all the other abilities don't have enough stun breaks for us to counter stuns. That's why I play a very risky game with 0 stun breaks. So I play on dodging my opponents, and protection injection is the only thing that can keep me kind of alive when I get stunned.
That's why you guys are so hard to kill with my Hamtastic build. Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that being a very viable reason, and I get it. I just think it may be a problem more for a single profession. Like, again, when we talk about warriors and anybody else, especially when it comes to applying consistent stuns and CC. So I can definitely see that being an issue.
Well, yeah, you have the thieves with the constant dazing. You have the necromancers with the triple fear. Yeah, you have quite a lot of classes that are able to do quite crazy stuff. Even engineers are able to do quite a lot of knockdowns and all that crazy stuff. Now, moving on though, on HC8 and the cleansing formula, they of course go together, but you're forced to play a full elixir build, which gives up a lot of your survivability because you'll be constantly spamming those elixirs and not really keeping them to be used on certain times. Like they'll usually run like the elixir B, where they get those buffs, and the only kind of survivability they have left is the elixir S and the stealth from the elixir S. But sometimes even spam that just to keep the might stacking up. So I could see how, like, because I think most people know what the HH does. It's trying to keep your might stacks up to 25, which gives you an insane amount of damage boost in both power and condition damage, which makes it a pretty crazy build, but you give up a lot of survivability. Moving into invigorating speed, it got nerfed recently. Before we were able to keep our figure permanently up, and it got lowered down to 6 seconds out of 10. So we have 4 seconds downtime on figure, and that is somewhat, again, necessary to stay alive since we do not have any good stun breaks or access to good stun breaks. So for me, it's something that I have to go for. The minor traits, Elixir B, same thing again, a love-hate relationship. Let's say you fight against a necromancer that has corrupt boon, and I get to 75% health, and he suddenly sees, oh nice, 4 boons, let me turn all those in conditions, and bam, you're done for. And there's no way that I could kind of like say, no, I don't want those boons, because I personally would love to remove these boons and not use them at all, because I don't think I need them. With the way I play, and I want to have control of my build instead of having like this massive bonus that can also be a massive counter to myself. The transmute, that one is freaking amazing. The amount of times it saved me from fears, because it turns that fear into stability. It's freaking amazing. I don't have anything to say about that.
All right. Let's see. We only got about 10 minutes left, so we'll run down the tools line real quick. Speedy kits, as I can touched on earlier. Also, here's the stat discharge. You got things like adrenal implant. You got, that's basically just perma vigor right there. You've got this seems very much in line with how discipline is for warrior. It's really good overall. It gives so much utility, so many extra benefits to just kind of the base way that the engineer or whatever profession that has this tree works. You got things like kit refinement. You got things like let's see what else we got. We got power wrench for more utility with your turrets, although I know turrets are kind of lacking at the moment. Speedy kits, as mentioned before, just things like it's just a lot of utility, a lot of very nice things that just help the engineer overall, to the point where it synergizes well with any trait build, like discipline does with the warrior. You've got traits that just help us in every way. They help our burst skills, help our mobility, help our everything. That's what the tools kit or the tools trait line seems to me as well. And to boot, it reduces cooldown of kits. So it's yeah, that's just my opinion of it. It just seems like it's just like the discipline tree for warrior. It's just very nice to have, no matter what you're doing. I mean, unless you're going for a more niche build, like I can't say HGH because I don't know the build well enough to say whether or not you actually go down it for that or not. But it seems like just a good trait line overall. Arkin.
Let's do it. Let's see what we got. Tools again. Speedy kits, a must for engineers to stay at range. I don't think anyone's going to disagree. I think every single engineer, regardless of what build you're going to run, is going to take that. I look at all the other traits, and I can honestly say the rest of these are pretty bad. Again, turrets are very underpowered and underutilized, so anything relating to those are actually pretty bad. Static discharge, again, I see a lot of those. I definitely see quite a bit of those, and I can see that being, contributing to a very high burst spec. So I guess I could see people saying that, but definitely if I had to choose one, it would have to be speedy kits. Let's go to the next. Let's try out for masters. Again, like power wrench seems like a pretty decent skill, but it's I don't know. Something's wrong here. I can't see any engineer running that. It doesn't seem to be very useful. Not many engineers I know run medkits. They usually run healing turret. That thing's amazing. So again, anything affecting a medkit seems like it would probably be a little bit of a waste. Let's see. You're looking at leg mods again. The this is very similar, if not the exact same thing as Dog March, without the without the regeneration and being a master. So it doesn't seem too bad, I could definitely see people utilizing that to reduce, a soft CC on you. But again, I would probably see myself probably throwing out static discharge if I'm running a power set, and then for the grandmasters, armor mods, that just seems like a much more powerful version of my Virtue of Courage. That's it. That's all I can really say. I don't see anybody really using that except maybe to troll. And again, adrenal implant, that's not too bad, but again, with the access to a lot of vigor via, what's that called? Invigorating speed, that seems like an unnecessary. So this tree has very few good traits that I could see being used, so except from, again, speedy kits being the main one. And that's it.
Yeah, speedy kits, I suggest that to every single person. It's a freaking amazing thing. You got permanent swiftness. It's so good. I honestly don't know many engineers that go for the Grandmaster just because there's better choices in other trait lines if you don't really want to go towards the Grandmaster. But for the Master, the Power Wrench is actually quite often chosen just because the extra cripple helps out a lot. And having a shorter cooldown on all those magnet skills, the toolkit skills like the pull, the pry bar, which is really strong, and the gear shield on a lower cooldown helps out a lot. And medkits, the only reason why I would see it picked is for this master minor trait, which is inertial converter, because the medkit, its actual heal is a tool belt skill. So you get your heal recharged at 25% health threshold, which means you can actually have 2 heal stuff. I could see it being used for that, but medkit to me it's too slow to be used because you'd actually have to drop those med packs, you'd actually have to drop those boons, and by that time you could have already done so much other things, and that's the reason why I would never pick medkit. But yeah, that's kind of the only thing. The other traits are not really too interesting. Not that I would ever pick those over all the other traits that I have the options to pick in the other lines.
And this just shows how clueless I am about engineer. I saw him like, oh, those look amazing. Like perma vigor, I would kill for that. But nope, evidently not. Evidently they're not all that great. Aside from a few choice ones, that sounds kind of like the one for it sounds kind of like the engineer equivalent of arms for warriors, which we have a few fantastic traits in arms. And the rest are kind of tactics, same thing. Few fantastic traits, the rest are kind of like I guess just I saw it, I'm like, oh my god, this is fantastic, and do all my level 13 engineer stuff amazingly with these. But again, I'm level 13. I'm not level 80 and well experienced in World of the World with engineer like I am with warrior. So, but again,
yeah, I completely forgot to talk about one trait, and that's automated response, which is in the final alchemy tree, Grandmaster. condition durations are reduced below the health threshold 25% health. So you can still like have your other conditions that you had applied before that 25% health will continue to happen, but if you reach below 25% health, the conditions you're immune completely. And that's one trait I have like I'm majorly against because it's anti skill play. You completely counter Condi builds if you run like an Elixir C and you turn all the Condis into boons at 25% health.
Yeah.
And that one I want to see change into like maybe something more active like the Cleansing Ire. You know, the Cleansing Ire, you can control it. Because if you do your burst, you can Condi remove. That's something I would love to see change for an engineer.
Yeah, something a bit more active, a bit more skill and influence. And this is a complete aside, but it's worth mentioning nonetheless. Right when you started, this was completely unplanned. Right when you started talking about automated response, the clip that you gave me, Koroshi, you stopped in this clip, and this is like a 7-month-old clip.
Yeah.
You stopped, you opened up your trait line, and in sync with what you were saying, you moused over automated response, and you had it sitting there for the entire time you were talking about automated response. It was perfect, not planned, nothing. Shit. But it's gonna throw so many people off when they watch the VOD of this. But yeah, Arken, we got enough time for you to throw some last thoughts on like the automated response thing or whatever you want to say.
Oh, that's just one of those few traits, very similar to like Diamond Skin. Too many hard counters, very little skillful play involved. Hard countering specs is not a good way to deal with this game in terms of balancing. Can't have it. It's not good. It promotes the rock paper scissors play, and that's something we need to avoid. This applies for every profession. Less proc on crits, less passive play, freaking less, for fuck's sake, excuse my language, AoE. Too much AoE. Jesus Christ. Every class has AoE. And in most cases, it's more effective than your single target. You know what I mean? Which makes no sense. So, that's it. I mean, other than that, it was a good discussion. I liked it. Very cool.
Yeah. All right. That is going to be our hour for this podcast. Thank you, Koroshi, for stopping by. I know we've been trying to get this going for a little bit, and there's been a little bit of bumpiness with other obligations and whatnot. But we got you on. We got you here for the discussion.
Yeah, it was awesome. I enjoyed it.
And Arken, thank you as usual. This is fun doing it with you. Fun having these conversations, talking about classes and just the general meta and all that fun stuff.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
Yeah. Let's see. We will decide what the next profession we're gonna do is coming up here. It'll I don't know if we'll be doing one in a week, but we'll try and at least do it every 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Hell yeah.
Yeah, we'll at least try and get one to you guys at least once every 2 weeks or so. If we can do them earlier, then we will. But phase we're going to try and at least do them twice a month. We so far, for those who have not been keeping track, we have done Warrior, Guardian, and Engineer now. We still have the other 5 to go, so we'll figure out what's coming up. I'll keep you guys posted on what the plan is. At least a bit better than I did with this one. I don't think I gave any real forewarning on the fact that we were doing an engineer for this. But yeah, we'll keep you guys posted. We'll try and find some people for getting on and discussion and whatnot. So that will be that. You guys can say your goodbyes if you want, real quick.
Bye-bye.
Well, thanks for listening and enjoy your night.
Yeah, all right. Take care, guys. Thanks for listening.